Hi, my name is Genevieve. I was homeschooled from kindergarten to grade 12, and there are a few things that I wish had been different. So, in this video, I'll be sharing my 9 biggest regrets from my homeschooling experience so you can learn from them and maybe avoid making the same mistakes. So, I'm going to be going down the list from the things I least regretted to the thing that I most regret. So, regret number 9, no access to libraries. So I grew up in Indonesia and there are no libraries there. And I was a big reader as a kid. And I still read a lot now, but it's not as much as an issue because I can borrow the books from my local library. I can use the Libby app and I can afford to buy my own books. But back then I had to scour like English secondhand bookshops and rarely get a new book. I would read off like sketchy websites that show way too many ads to read like the free PDF of that book. I am a textual learner, so I read best through reading the information. So it's kind of like your kid is really good at soccer and basketball, but you give them a really bad ball to play with. That's kind of what it felt like growing up, not having access to books. But I am still grateful to my parents because I still managed to read a lot, and some of my favorite books of all time. And when I was 12, 13, 14, my grandpa and my aunt from Canada sent a shipment of loads of books, so we did get more books in our library. If I lived in Canada, for example, I think it would have been easier for me to read books and not have to struggle to find them. Regret number 8, not being taught about money. Now, I'm talking about like the basic things like budgeting, what is profit, revenue, what is a mortgage, like real basic stuff I didn't know. When I was 14 or 15, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that opened my eyes a little. And in that, I learned about what an asset is versus a liability. I was really inspired by that book and learned a lot, but didn't really think about like personal finance from that book. It was more like a business related book. And it wasn't until I met my husband who taught me about taxes and tax refunds. And then, shortly after I met my husband, I read How to Get Rich by Ramit Sethi. And that really opened up my eyes about how little I knew about managing like personal finance and making huge decisions on like buying a house, buying a car. So when I was a kid, I hated when the topic of money came up because the room would get tense and the subject would quickly close. I remember when I was doing a math test when I did a 1 year stint in public school in Canada, and during the test there was a question about like the math question was about calculating profit or something, and I raised my hand during the test to ask what profit meant, and understandably, my teacher was like, "Just continue on with your test." I was in grade 7, by the way, when that happened. Regret number 7, having a very extremely frustrating high school experience, what with family responsibilities, random assignments, and a lack of resources. So when I was 12, I came back from Canada after my 1 year of public schooling. After a 1 year public schooling experience, I came back from Canada to Indonesia, um, to continue homeschooling. And I knew, when I was 12, that I wanted to come back to Canada to go to university here. I was highly motivated and self driven to study at, at 12 years old, but my high school experience was frustrating to say the least. As the oldest of four, I had a lot of responsibilities and that often took priority over studying. I couldn't study in the mornings when my mind was the sharpest because I had to do other things. And at night, when the day was over and I was in my room, I couldn't study, like do research on my computer because the Wi-Fi would be turned off. So I was limited to like learning from books and textbooks. And I remember going to my friend's house and studying there. Also, there was no curriculum or structure to what I was studying. My dad would just assign random topics, like read this dense physics textbooks and quiz me on like the topics. just like verbally talking. And he would do this without explaining why it was important to like learn the random things that he assigned. I was trying to build like a learning path to make sure that I know everything I need to know in order to apply to universities and actually have the knowledge that other students would have in like certain grade levels. And I would piece this all together with whatever available textbooks and books that I had at home. As a teenager, nothing was ever bought new. Like, I didn't have any courses. I didn't have any online courses, didn't have any online textbooks or special textbooks that was sent over. Any textbooks, it was found in like secondhand English bookshops in Indonesia. They were usually dense and they didn't have the best explanations. This leads on to my next point. Regret number 6, not being taught by grade, or at least like having some knowledge of what grade I was at. My whole life, people would ask me what grade I'm in, and I wouldn't know what to answer. I generally would answer what grade I would be in if I were to go to school based on my age. Um, but I didn't actually know if I was learning at that grade level. And this didn't help when my dad constantly referred to my homeschooling as world schooling. Like, it sounds so vague and pretentious. And, Indonesians are generally just curious on, what teaching your children at home looks like. In the end, this is something that I regretted because I just got this question all the time and it was confusing to say the least. And there's a reason for that. When I was 12 to 17, basically the high school years, we didn't have any like textbooks or like grade 9 math, grade 10 math, etc. And we just had like random college textbooks. So when I looked up for grade 10 math test or some sort of science test and see the test and see that I couldn't answer those questions, I knew that I wasn't learning at that specific grade level. This is why I love the book Home Learning Year by Year by Rebecca Rupp. She lists what each grade would typically be learning for different subjects: math, history, um, science, and so on. She homeschooled all of her 3 children. All of them went to universities. 2 of them have master's degrees at the time of the book was published. Imagine if I had this book back then, where I was just like randomly trying to make a curriculum and making sure that I am knowledgeable about all these different topics, like making sure I know all the like everything that there is to know about grade 10 math and grade 9 math from like different websites and from different schooling systems. Like, I'd be looking at UK and Canada and US, who all have like different schooling expectations for each grade. And I would piece them all together to try to make a curriculum for myself. But I can only look forward from now. Regret number 5, not being as fluent linguistically and like reading wise in Indonesian. So growing up, we only spoke English in the home and Indonesian in the outside world. My mom did not like Indonesian TV shows, so we did not watch any of that at home. And my mom did not listen to Indonesian music, so we didn't even listen to any Indonesian music really. All the like fiction books we had and nonfiction books were in English, and some in Indonesian textbooks that we were taught from, but we were taught from those textbooks in English. So my dad would like read the textbook in Indonesian and then translate the ideas to us in English. When I was a teenager, my dad got this grammar dictionary type thing in Indonesian. And I did learn from that book. And I tried to learn new vocabulary from reading a newspaper, but still, I've only read one Indonesian novel in my entire life. Compared to hundreds that I've read in English. And I cannot write an essay in Indonesian, which is something I wish I had learned. I mean, it's not too late. I can still study Indonesian if I wanted to, but I don't live there anymore and I don't see myself living there in the foreseeable future. Regret number 4, not being tested. Now, let me define what being tested means. So, it's the ability to recall information in whatever context it appears in and answer those questions in a specific time frame. This is my definition for it, by the way. um, there has been a lot of research done that that testing in the early grades is not beneficial for students. Here's a quote from this article that explains how it's not beneficial. Tests cover too much too superficially and didn't get close enough to what children actually knew and understood, didn't honor their slow, more intense, meaning making, hands on, observational, and experience oriented approaches. So, for myself, I don't regret not being tested in the early grades. I'm talking about like later in high school, because the ability to take a test is a whole different skill than just knowing about that certain topic. For example, if you've ever watched the TV series called Suits, there there's this paralegal, Rachel Zane, that is extremely smart. And in the first episode, this man gets hired in a top law firm in New York City, without ever having gone to law school. And he's talking to this paralegal, and he says that she's too smart to be a paralegal. She acknowledges this and says that she cannot pass the LSATs, that she does not do well in tests. So she is stuck being a paralegal unless she gets used to the discomfort of doing a test, and which she does in the show. She studies for it and eventually does pass the LSAT. It's a really good show. And this kind of applies to me because I did pass the SATs with really high scores, but I studied for that test for over a year. And in university, I had to learn an entirely new skill, and that is taking tests that my peers at university have been doing for years. Because in university, you are tested a lot through quizzes, midterms, and final exams. And these tests at university are on steroids because you are being tested on a lot of material that was covered in a short time. So I wish I had done more tests during the high school years. Actually, never took any tests. So I can't even say I wish I'd done more tests. I wish I was tested. In the job search market, you are tested on your knowledge during interviews. And when you enter the workforce, you are often tested on your knowledge and what you've come up in a proposal. So the ability to take a test is definitely a lifelong skill. Regret number 3, not following any curriculums. So I kind of already touched on this point, but we never followed a curriculum. Indonesian textbooks were bought and we were taught by those, even though we were not learning Indonesian, and I felt like it was picked through and stuff. And I know that not following any curriculum is the beauty of homeschooling, but from my experience, not having a curriculum and just picking and choosing and following things at random, it felt a little bit chaotic. I think there is a way to do it that would feel less chaotic. It just felt like there was no consistency. And this leads on to my next point. Regret number 2, having no structure in my day. There was no routines growing up. Every day was different. And I'm the type of person that loves routines. I remember as a child, like making timetables in my notebook, like 5 a.m., get up, pray, get ready for gymnastics, etc. And I didn't show this to anyone because I was too embarrassed. I actually am still embarrassed to this day that I plan my day hour by hour. I don't do that much anymore since having 2 kids. The thing is, children actually need routines in their lives. It gives children a sense of security, structure, and predictability. By knowing what to expect, children are more calm and are less resistant when switching between activities. By having a routine, children can build independence and reinforce the good habits. And it lets kids sleep better at night, knowing, the routine there is in going to bed. And children actually have more freedom when they have a routine because they have the sense of security of how the day will flow, and they're able to explore during the free play times that they have between the activities that are kind of set in your day, like breakfast, chores, homeschooling. And so the play times and the free times that they know they can expect during the day are look for like the children look forward to that, and there's more freedom in what they can do. Regret number 1. Lastly, I regret not doing presentations. I did 0 presentations during high school, and this is a skill that the earlier you learn it, the better it is for you down the line. When I say presentations, I'm talking about a public speaking event where you are talking about a topic that you have researched, accompanied by a slideshow with at least two people present during your talk. It is something that everyone has to do when they become an adult. And the earlier you learn how to do it, the better. If you are extremely good at this skill, it can set you up for life. And if you start doing this during high school, then during university and when you enter the workforce, you have a little more experience in presenting under your belt. The first presentation I ever took was in English class. My voice was shaking, my hands were shaking, and I was so embarrassed about how badly my presentation was going. Since then, I have gotten a lot better, what with other presentations at school and work-related presentations. So those were my biggest regrets from being homeschooled. I'm sharing all of this not to criticize homeschooling. I think it's an amazing way to um, give your child an education. But I hope that this gives a perspective, in homeschooling that maybe your child is not able to express yet. And these are things that I really didn't realize until much later in life, actually just recently since having my own kids, that I have been able to reflect on my own homeschooling experience. I hope that by learning them now, you can think about your own homeschooling journey and how you can make it better. Whatever it is that you want to improve in your homeschooling experience, I hope this video helped in seeing something in a different light. I have two other videos explaining the pros and cons, like the benefits and the cons of homeschooling, which I'll link below in the description box. Other than that, thank you for watching. And if you related to anything in this video or have, your own homeschooling regret experience, I'd love to hear it below in the comments. Bye.